Hi, I'm Tom Eschen, and welcome to the award-winning Power in Politics podcast, the conversation about the issues that are impacting you the most with the people that are making those decisions and the advocates holding them accountable along the way at the same time. Today we speak with a Capital Region business leader and also New York State and the nation as well, Trent Griffin Braaf. And he is also formerly incarcerated. He says he went from being a felon to being in Forbes, and he was. Forbes, Bloomberg, New York Times all recognize him over the last few years for a variety of reasons. So we get into what happened in his life and how he has grown from there, how he's become what he has become in the business world at that. We speak to policy, the Clean Slate Act. We talk about DEI and black-owned businesses and what that all means, not just in Albany, but in New York State too. Thanks as always for listening and watching. You can listen wherever you get your podcasts at our Power in Politics podcast page, or watch us on YouTube at CBS 6 Albany. We are joined today by Trent Griffin Braaf. He is a business leader in our community and beyond New York State and the country as well, very well renowned, known, and an impactful voice, you could say, in the business community specifically. Thanks so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Tom, for having me.
For people who might not know who you are, who are you? Tell us a bit of your story.
Gotcha. So I guess my story essentially, to sum it up, I went from felon to Forbes. I'm somebody who grew up like most inner city youth, I put myself inside of jail at the age of 19. I came home around 23 and just worked my way up in the corporate world and then eventually started my own business. And so that's my story, felon to Forbes.
Why did you just change that? Instead of found yourself, you put yourself.
Oh, because I take full accountability. You know, the things I was doing is what put me in jail. If I weren't making those decisions, if I weren't doing those things, I would have never ended up in there.
When did your life turn? Was it when you were in jail? Was it after that? Was there a moment in time that things sort of started to shift for you?
Definitely, 100%. It was after the birth of my daughter. I actually had missed the birth of my oldest daughter, and I was inside Albany County Jail on a parole violation. And I just, at that moment, I didn't want to be the father who wasn't there for his child. Losing my father at a young age, that was something that was always important to me. And so at that moment, I said, I have to do whatever I have to do to make sure I never end up back in here.
How long were you incarcerated for?
In total, a little over 4 years, probably about 4.5 to 5 years.
What you mentioned, a parole violation. What was the original
charge?
Yeah, what was the original charge?
Original charge was narcotic sales.
Okay. Yeah. So after you got out, you mentioned the birth of your daughter. What was your first step, I guess, maybe even in the business world, right? Is that where it all began?
No, it actually began cleaning toilets at a hotel.
One version of a business world, right?
There it is.
The lower rung of the business world.
That's right, the entry-level space.
Yeah.
And so it really turned when I was given the opportunity to work at a Marriott in Albany, cleaning toilets. And I just wanted to dedicate myself. I had never really given myself a true shot in the workforce. At this point, I'm 23, 24 years old, and I just put my head down and I said, I want to learn as much as I possibly can, and if they're giving me this opportunity, I want to see how far I could take it.
Was it always business? Was it growing in that, I guess, in that vein, or just being a good worker?
Oh, I was always business oriented.
You were, okay.
Like from a kid, I always wanted to be in business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why?
Honestly, my mom used to work in Manhattan, and so I didn't know this at that point, but I used to see all of the stock guys, and they used to be walking around with their suits on, their briefcase, and to me, I didn't see that where I lived in the Bronx, and so that looked like success to me. And so business was my gateway to success, I think.
You talked about, obviously, we know some of your accolades, 2023 Small Business Person of the Year in New York State. You mentioned Forbes and all these different modes of recognition. What was your big break, would you say? Did you have one, or was it more of a slow build?
I think it was more of a slow, I guess I could say one of my big breaks was when we got a contract with Amazon. That was a pretty big break. But I think
that through Tech Valley Shuttle?
No, that was actually a spin-off from Tech Valley Shuttle. I started a logistics company. This happened during COVID.
Okay.
Right at the beginning of COVID. And so that was one of probably a bigger break. But honestly, it's been a continual kind of a slow grind more than anything. That just happened to be one of those moments where it's like, wow, I have a contract with Amazon, you know?
Yeah, right, that makes a big difference.
Right.
When it comes to your business, we'll get to some of the specifics here, in a second of your ventures, but your philosophy, like what do you want to bring to the world in that vein? at the end of the day?
Essentially, what I want to bring the world is impact, positive impact, really trying to create pathways for individuals who are marginalized or just don't have an upper hand. That's really my goal.
Is that out of your own experience, or is that through conversations you've had since you were incarcerated? I guess, where does that come from?
It's a combination. Definitely some of my own experience. I mean, I come from humble beginnings. I grew up in it's called Tracy Towers in the Bronx. It's 2 project buildings, 41 stories high. Someone on the left of you, the right of you, above you, behind. And this is where my beginnings were. Now, ironically, my father, he lived on Riverside Drive in Harlem, and he had like a condominium. So growing up, I seen the starch difference between roaches in my cereal to going to dad's house and you might see a caviar, or Grey Poupon, right? And so through that, I knew I didn't want to grow up and live in poverty my whole life. I say now I engage with so many people and constantly hear their stories. It always brings me back to my humble beginnings. And so because of that, that's been really some of my inspiration.
To try and open some doors.
For others.
Right, that you maybe didn't see, that you saw closed.
100%.
So let's talk about, I think you go, and if you go Google his name, you'll see Tech Valley Shuttle. That's probably what you're most synonymous here with the capital region, I'd say, locally. I know that that's been an interesting now sort of road, I guess, for no pun intended. Tell us how that started and where it is today, because I know it's taken some turns for you.
Definitely. So started in 2016. I was actually the general manager of a hotel at that point. And big shout out.
The same one that you were cleaning toilets at?
No, no longer there. No longer there. Actually, the Malozzi family. They had the Belvedere Inn. Shout out to the Malozzis.
Yeah.
And they give me an opportunity. I was the general manager. And for those who don't know, they also do all of the food at the casino. And so given how close their ties were to the casino, I was kind of privy to things that was coming. I also sat on the Discover Schenectady board at the time, so I had some relationship with hotel leaders. And this was before Uber or Lyft. And so remember, we had the yellow cabs. I don't know, they used to smell like cigarettes. It just wasn't a good experience, right?
It was a lot tougher to get around back then. Everyone might not remember that, but
it was a nasty time.
Yeah, I mean.
And so what I identified, though, from my original job at the hotel in Albany, we had a shuttle. Hotels in Albany had shuttle services. When I travel, hotels had shuttle services. Schenectady hotels had no shuttle services. And so I'm thinking, with this casino coming, this is a great opportunity, something that we could bring that fills a need. And so that was the start of Tech Valley. We started working with hotels. Quickly, we started working with a lot of hotels, but I remember in probably 2018, I got the poverty report for the capital region. And I just remember reading the poverty report, and I'm thinking, man, transportation can help that, transportation can help that, transportation. And so I'm starting to identify there's things we can do, from addressing food insecurity to helping people get to and from work, reducing recidivism rates in jails and prisons. And so I started to come up with service ideas that we would be able to fill those needs. And so had a lot of success in doing so. Unfortunately, last year, we had to make a tough decision and actually pivot away from Tech Valley Shuttle altogether, sunset it. Essentially, laws change, policies change after that horrific limousine accident. And that's somewhere where I dropped the ball. I wasn't following what was coming down the trajectory. And one of the biggest changes were with insurance. And so after that accident, many insurances left New York State because of the minimums of premiums going up so high, especially in 4-passenger transportation. And we were in direct alignment with that. In addition to, even though we were in business for 7-8 years and never had any accidents, we were still considered a newer and a smaller fleet. And so those combinations really put us in a space where our insurance went up 800%. And so essentially, to put a dollar amount behind that, you can essentially say we were paying $100,000 a year for insurance. After that, it jumped to $800,000. And if we're doing community-based transportation, it just wasn't sustainable.
Yeah. The impact, you speak to transportation unlocking some of those things. You mentioned food insecurity, you mentioned recidivism, you mentioned workforce, and getting there. From your experience on a macro scale, what kind of impact does transportation have on people? Why is that so important? Because you said you looked at that and you had three different huge tenants that you saw that it could help fill a need. Why?
I think I mean, if you look at most things, transportation is always a need. When you look at wraparound services for individuals who receive or need wraparound services, transportation is always a barrier. When you think about getting people to work, transportation is always a barrier. I mean, transportation, if you really think about it, transportation is a form of freedom. Because if you could just jump in your car and drive wherever you want to go, that's freedom for someone who can't do the same. And so transportation unlocks a lot for people. And I didn't realize it until I really got into the industry, how impactful it really is.
You know, and you kind of speak to this from a business standpoint. It's not always easy, right? I mean, there's a lot of challenges, a lot of different factors that you have to consider. And that's where we get to your, I guess, I don't want to call it a pivot because it was something you already had, the Success Map Initiative.
Correct.
But more focus on that now.
100%.
Tell us more about that.
So one thing I want to say, Tech Valley Shuttle was the foundation for the Success Map Initiative and what we're doing today. Because even we were doing a lot of transportation to help the community that way. One of the things that was huge is what we were doing in the workforce, preparing people through transportation. And so now we just kind of continue that we picked up the ball and continue with it. And so although we pivot away from for-hire passenger transportation, we still do logistical transportation. We're still able to bring people into the workforce, and we're still able to help individuals get their commercial driver's license and go on from there. But in addition to that, with the Success Map Initiative, we're now focusing solely on workforce development. And so it's not just about getting people into transportation. Now we're helping getting people into the hospitality industry, the restaurants industries, manufacturing, starting their own businesses. There's just, we're utilizing our network now in the experiences that we've had to create opportunities for others.
Workforce development for who? A specific population?
Great question. Yes, it's kind of niche. I'll say that. Yeah. And I'll say it's niche because we focus on youth. But I think a lot of people in the capital region, they really gotten to know us for the work we're doing with justice-impacted individuals. And so meaning we go into jails, we go into prisons, we go into federal correctional facilities, youth detention centers, and we're educating individuals through workforce development. And ultimately, workforce development to me is this term that it encompasses a lot. Everyone does workforce development.
Right, yeah.
What I would like to say is we really focus on career pathways. And so, we do soft skills, mock interviews, how to apply, all of that stuff. But what we're really teaching people is really through my lived experience of how I came home at that hotel as an entry-level role, and I was able to work my way to general manager. I'm giving people that mindset and the blueprint on how they can do the same in almost any industry.
How do you approach a justice-impacted individual? What is that? First conversation like? Second, is it depend on the individual? How does that go?
So I think there's something called a trusted messenger. That's what they call someone who's been justice impacted and goes back and helps other people through that lived experience. And so for me, it's not really that difficult because once I kind of share my story, people open up. And what I typically like to do is if I'm going into a new facility or I'm working with a new unit or things of that nature, I'll do a presentation really showing them my life, and I get to walk them through it. So they'll see pictures of me as a kid selling drugs inside a jail with my grandmother, with my mom, and they start to identify and see themselves in some of that story. Then as I start to talk about the successes that I've had, that's really where I really want them to see themselves, to let them know, yeah, this was a setback, you made a bad decision, but it doesn't have to be the end of the road for you. There are still ways you can make it and live the life you want.
They see themselves in you. Do you see yourself in them at all?
100%. 100%. They motivate me every day. Every time I go in the facility, every time I work with individuals, I'm motivated and inspired because, one, I know each and every human being is one mistake away from being in that same exact spot. And so we make one mistake when we wake up and we can end up there. So I'm always grateful for the experiences I've had, and they motivate me every single time I leave out of those facilities with their resilience, with their mindset of what the things they want to do, and their willingness to say, hey, I'm going to put my head down and work for it.
And at the end of the day, you see your work as providing also the bridge after that, right? Because I think that's something when you speak to those that are formerly incarcerated or those in that vein, that there are some struggles at times of being able to access workforce, access housing, access these things in life that I think a lot of people probably take for granted.
100%.
And I'm sure you probably see a void there, right? And that's why you're doing the work you're doing.
Huge void.
Yeah.
A lot of the void really comes from, and no knock at anyone, but a lot of the programming and things that take place weren't formed by individuals who have to walk that walk. And so I think what I'm able to bring to the table is a true curriculum of someone who's walked the walk, have seen the successes, and can tell you exactly how to do it. Additional to that, though, the other thing where we're very niche is we train employers on how to have success with the populations. And so we worked with some of the biggest employers in the region, from CDTA, Stewart's, Market 32, to name a few. And essentially what they allow me to do is come and work with their frontline management teams and do trainings that'll help them remove some of the bias, the stigmas, understand the criminal justice system a little bit more, work with their HR teams so they could take advantage of all the incentives that are out there. Because as I tell people, you don't have to do this work as an employer. You don't have to hire this population to say we want to do all of the good things in the world. You might want to. But I know you're in business for the bottom line, and I know workers enhance the bottom line.
Yeah.
So if I can show you how you can minimize your risk, how there's programs out here that will actually put money back in your company's pockets for hiring this population, and I'll bring the population to your doorstep so you don't have to find them, you really can't miss.
Mm-hmm. That's where the bridge comes in.
That's the bridge.
Yeah. And then you look at policy now when it comes to all of that. The Clean Slate Act passed a couple years ago now here in New York State. What kind of, obviously that's 5 years, I believe was the parameter of when the Clean Slate would be enacted.
Correct.
What's your perspective on that impact?
I think Clean Slate is going to have a great impact. I actually played a little part in getting some of that policy work done. What my role was actually, I was brought on as a consultant for Mark Zuckerberg. He has a company called Forward Us, and they focus on policy for justice impacted individuals and for new citizens. And so my whole mission was to get other business leaders to sign on, because I wanted to be able to educate them on how this will affect their workforce. And so I'm a huge fan of the Clean Slate law, and I'm happy that it's here. I'm hopeful that it will actually help individuals. I think we just need more education around it. There's people who have records and don't know what Clean Slate's going to do for them. Yeah. And I know there's employers who still don't understand the technicalities around it and how it's going to affect their workforce either. So I think it's a good incentive, and I'm happy they did give a little bit more of a runway so we could prepare people for it. And I just think it's another one of those things that can actually help people in the workforce.
Is it something you think that would have helped you, could have helped you initially? Obviously, you're farther removed from that at this point.
I think definitely back then it would have played a big role. You know, when I came home from incarceration, it was 2007. So there was a lot more bias and stigmas against this population, and something called hiring discrimination, felony discrimination, that was taking place. So I could tell you firsthand, there were times I was offered jobs. I was forefrontful about my background, and still, even though they offered me the job, when they got the report, they took back the offer. And so it becomes hard to continually be told no, or thinking you have an opportunity and stripped from it. So I think it would have been beneficial back then. But I also think there's more that we need to do to continue to help individuals and organizations together when it comes to policy change.
You look, so that's at the New York level. You obviously nationally worked with Mark Zuckerberg on that level as well. The federal level, obviously we're seeing policy come down when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion. Do you see it impacting the people you work with?
Oh, definitely. I mean, DEI was really put out there to help marginalized populations, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's what it stands for. And so you're definitely going to see, being that things are being stripped back, is definitely going to affect the population.
Interesting. I did want to also ask, just to circle back real quick, is you did put, I was just reading, you put a job fair on inside the correctional facility. How did that work? I thought that was a very specific and interesting aspect that goes beyond maybe just some of the interactions you have.
No, it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. Shout out to the Albany County Jail for allowing me the opportunity. Essentially what I did was I worked with some of the population, the residents at the county. We prepared them for what it takes to interview. And then working with the facility, we brought in 2 employers. We wanted to be specific. We wanted it to be smaller. We wanted to have some real impact. Shout out to Janitronics. They were one of the employers. And essentially what we did was they came right into the facility. We had the targeted population that we knew we offered this opportunity to, and they were able to come. They were able to interview. Some, I think, were even offered a job on the spot. But we didn't stop there. Then we brought the job fair in the afternoon to the SHIP Center, which is the center for those who are displaced, and then we continued on the job fair from there. And so we actually help not just the incarcerated population, but also the displaced population. And that's something we're looking to continue to bring. We're going to do another one in Albany County Jail, but I'm also hopeful to be able to do that in other facilities and maybe even be able to help train other organizations on how to pull something like this off.
We were talking before we started a bit about Albany and crime and the conversations we've had here and over the course of the past few months. What do you see in terms of let's go to the business angle first of support for Black-owned businesses, for minorities, for people of color in the city specifically, maybe even New York State. What are some of the challenges you see individuals facing? What are some of the barriers? But also, what are you seeing success?
All right, so
and it's broad. There's a lot to that.
That was a deep one.
But obviously, this is a community that's looking to invest and grow, and I think people in Albany are looking for that. And they're looking for things to develop more.
You know what I think? Just being totally honest, I know we put an emphasis on Black-owned business or these specific businesses based upon race or gender, woman-owned, things of that nature.
Yeah.
But I'm a firm believer if you do good business, you do good business, period, point blank, period. Us personally, we've never benefited from having a WMBE certification. That didn't help us get a contract. And I know things have changed in the state. There's something called the New York State Contractor. They help with WMBE certifications, and there are businesses that have benefited from it. But from my perspective, it didn't do anything for us. So for me, I don't really lean into the Black-owned business. You really don't never hear me say the Black-owned business or anything of that nature. Yeah. I'm a firm believer good business is good business. And if you do good business, you'll find your customers and you'll be able to have your bottom line, your profit margin.
Is Albany a good place to do business?
That's a great question. It's a tricky place to do business. I'll say that. But I think it merits. Actually, it is a good place to do business, and this is why. I always like to think of Albany as a training ground for me personally, and like you mentioned, we do things on a national front as well. And so Albany, as they say, small Albany, is a great training ground because one, most of America mirrors what an Albany district looks like. There's only one New York City, one Miami, one, you know what I mean?
Right.
So most of the country looks like Albany.
Yeah.
And because of that, if you can have success in Albany, if you can learn how to do business in Albany, I believe you can do business anywhere. And so for that one reason, I think it's a great area to do business. I say it's tricky to do business because there are still those networks where it's hard to crack in. I guess the best way I could sum it up for is like this. I feel like in some ways I've become like a novelty piece, right? I get invited to awards. You want me to come to your dinners, right? You tell me you love the work. It's a great story. You love the work. But it's hard to close the gap on the contracts. And I don't know if it's just because of me being forefront with my criminal record, for what I stand and believe in trying to help others. But I do believe sincerely in my heart that I don't get all of the opportunities that I should. I'll say that.
And you think it's both? It can be both individual.
I can't put a finger on it.
Right? Yeah.
I can't put it. I haven't been able to nail it down what exactly it is, but I do believe I just don't get all of the opportunities that I should get.
What about in the state? We hear a lot about, at the state level, is New York a good place for people to come? Or, our business owner leaders leaving? You hear a lot of those, there's too much red tape. There's too many things that, you just spoke to.
Policies.
Legislation with of course, the Schoharie limo, which I think a lot of that was, of course, a reaction to a tragedy at the end of the day. Like, that's one thing. It's very specific. But you know what I mean in terms of what it looks like in New York right now from your perspective?
So I think New York State, I believe New York State works as a system in itself. And I guess the gift and the curse of New York State is New York is one of the most progressive states, right? So we have a progressive educational system through SUNY. We have a progressive Department of Labor. We have all of these systems that are a lot more progressive than in other states. But because of that, they all operate as if they're one big unit as a team, which means then if you do some of those same things, then you're essentially boxed out. And so because of that, I think that's one reason it's hard to do business in New York. The other thing I think, like you said, there's a lot of policy. You pay a lot of taxes in New York. And so I think that's also, for businesses, a lot of reason why they'll leave the state because of the policy and the taxes. And so so I think it's definitely a gift and a curse, and you have to be able to figure out that balance if you want to be successful in business in New York State.
What would make it easier? I don't know if that's the right word, but what would break down some of those barriers, some of the challenges? What would make it a little bit more conducive?
I think the policies, I don't think most business owners came into business because they believe in what they can do and what they're able to bring in the table, and they didn't want to feel confined. And then you find out you're right back to being confined in what you can do. And so I think really, if as a state, listening to the business leaders, listening to the businesses, and I know the New York State Business Council tries to do a good job of going to war for the business leaders and getting these laws and things changed. And I just think, and so, yeah.
Yeah, interesting. You speak to that sort of the high-end business scale, if you will, of what that looks like and what they're doing in the Capitol. How about outside of that, as you look at, I'm thinking about young people and what they're striving to be, and I think the idea for a lot of those leaders is to keep them in New York so they can do things like business and healthcare and everything else. What do you think the youth, the juvenile population needs to be able to succeed? As someone that goes in and works with young people in correctional facilities, justice impacted individuals, what do you think that they're looking for? Obviously before they get to that outcome. Yeah.
Well, I could tell you, especially for the populations we work with, they need hope. I mean, you drive around our cities, you go city of Schenectady, city of Albany, city of Troy. You look at abandoned buildings, you see the red X's on buildings. What does that do for a kid? If this, especially understanding if we go back to transportation and they're only going to be in a 6 to 8 block radius for the most, that's typically what they see. So if every other house looks like that, I have no pride in my community. In fact, I have no problem taking the risk that I'm taking because look at what the outcomes are. And I mean, we took a group of youth down to Columbia College who's on probation, right? And we talked to the group and we asked the group, what do you want to do? Like, what's your dream? And to hear kids say, I want to be a janitor. That's my dream. That's as far as I could see myself. Was heartbreaking. And it told me in that moment, I know why this kid is on probation. Like, if that's, and no knock at a janitor. In fact, I was a janitor, so I get to start,
you could say that, yeah.
But my dream was never to be a janitor. I had bigger dreams than that. And I think one of the main things our babies need is hope. They need to be able to see as possible. There's more out there for them to achieve. I think also we need more outlets for them. I remember growing up as a kid, growing up in the Capital Region, there was outlets. There were community centers we could go to. There were things taking place that we could just be a part of as youth. You don't see that as much anymore. You don't see the community centers. You don't see those areas, those hubs where the youth could go to and interact. And so that's actually why over the summer, myself, Coco House, William Rivez, and Rayshawn Freeman, an ex-basketball player, we restored the Jerry Burrell Basketball League in Schenectady because we wanted to create a space that the youth would come to, have fun, be engaged, and feel safe. And lo and behold, we went through the whole summer with not one incident in terms of things happening. Negative. other than partnering with Market 32 to provide food for the youth, business for good coming out and bringing ice cream to the community, all of the good things like that was taking place, working with the Schenectady Police Department to assure that the kids had a safe space. And so I think they need more of that. They need to see that, and they need to see people in their community who are thriving. If no one's thriving in my community, well, I'm naturally going to gravitate towards doing the things that I see those who are thriving in my community doing. Yeah. And so I think it's a combination.
When it comes to the interactions you have, talk about the job fair, things like that, do you have success stories that have stuck with you?
Tons of. Shoot, yesterday, it's perfect timing. Yesterday we were filming a video we're going to be releasing soon. And I had probably about 15 different individuals who, just came and shared their success stories. It was about 4 hours of taping. And I mean, I told everyone in the room I felt like it was my Christmas, just to hear all of these different impactful stories, things that I knew, but sometimes you got to be reminded of because it happened so long ago, or you don't know how it affected. Like we had one gentleman, he came home after doing 25 years. He said, Trent, I didn't know how to use my phone. I didn't think I could get a job. He said, you opened your door to me immediately. He said, by doing so, I was able to create a budget. I was able to buy a car. He said, I didn't think I was ever going to be able to get a car. So and now he's thriving. I helped him get a job in the Price Chopper so he could get more hours. And so he's doing good for himself now. And hearing little stories like that mean a lot. Another gentleman, we call him Big E. I met him while he was in Green Correctional Facility. I was doing my program in there. He'll tell you himself, he had no plan for himself. He had no goals for himself. He said he met me and that changed everything. And so when you hear that he's been home, he got off of parole early, he's working. And so when you start to hear these stories, it just highlights that transformation is definitely possible, 100%. And people just need someone in their lives that they can mirror, that they could believe in, they could see that hope and motivation, and then they go out and do the same.
Yeah, that's really cool. And something else that stuck out during this conversation, you've mentioned a lot of big companies, and maybe not big, but like in terms of their name recognition around here. Mm-hmm. How have you gone about facilitating those relationships and trying to get your foot in the door there to obviously open up the doors for everyone else? How have you been able to do that?
So I think through my successes that I've had in business and, being I'm not the normal face in the room, you would say, in a lot of spaces. And so typically when I walk in, either you want to know who is that guy or you know who the guy is. And so because of that, I've been able to develop relationships, like genuine relationships. I'm not someone who, it's not what you could do for me kind of guy. I'm the guy who says, let's go out to have a lunch. Like, I want to learn you. Are you married? Do you have kids? Like, that sort of stuff. And then from there, naturally, synergies will happen. If things work out, it works out. If not, I just got another great person in my network. And so essentially, I've been able to establish relationships, work relationships, and I believe that a lot of these businesses, they trust me. They say, hey, Trent, we see the work you're doing. It's been publicized that my company, Tech Valley Shuttle, in 2023 was named the best place in the country for formerly incarcerated individuals to work. And so it's like, Trent, I think you could bring some value to what we have going on here. And, some of those bigger organizations gave me a shot. And I would like to take a moment to give a shout out to Carm Basil, the old CEO of CDTA, because he was the pivotal moment to really tell me this is the direction you should really go in. He called me one day and we were talking and he said, Trent, businesses need what you got. And I told him, I said, Carm, that's my retirement plan. I'm like 40 years old. I'll do that in 20 years. And he was like, no, man, you got to strike while the iron's hot. And I said, well, if you believe that, will you give me a shot to come work with CDTA? And he said, absolutely. And so we never looked back since. And so definitely want to give a shout out to Carm for that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Finally, what's next for you? Obviously you want to continue to grow the success map. Mm-hmm. Is it delving deeper there? Do you have other things you want to get into? What's happening now?
I love what I do. I genuinely love what I do. I wake up every day inspired, motivated. Like, I guess I understand what they say. If you love what you're doing, it doesn't feel like work, right? And so for that reason, like, all I want to do is stay in this lane and figure out other ways that I could bring value, let it be to the state, let it be to the cities, to the counties, to our state, but then also on the national front. And so my intentions are to try to create systems that will help reduce recidivism, help more people. My agenda is to try to see more people with criminal records thrive. I have a personal mission for myself where I want to be able to at least help 5 people become millionaires who've been incarcerated. And so those are the things that I'm really focused on.
And you sit, to follow up on that, you do sit on boards. Like, you make sure your voice is in the room,
Definitely.
right? That's got to be also
Hundred
a really big priority for you.
And I'm a straight shooter. I'm going to genuinely tell you how I feel, what's on my mind, respectfully, and I'm going to challenge you. And so, and I think it's a good challenge, though. It's not like I try to rub people the wrong way. What I'm really trying to do is just to get you to think. And if I can get you to think and have some understanding, then that means we can open up some opportunities for others.
Trent, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Hit the subscribe button right now so you can stay up to date on these news-making conversations about the issues impacting New Yorkers the most: power and politics.